We are going to Melbourne. We've been there countless times, but this time it's a bit different. That's because we're not taking a plane this time. We're taking a sleeper train. There are 2 trains per day that operate between Sydney and Melbourne. One is a day train, and the other is a night train. We're taking the night train, which departs Sydney in the evening and arrives in Melbourne the next morning. The ride will take about 11 hours. Here comes the train. The sleeper cars are labeled as first class. Wow, I can't afford first class on a plane, but this first class is affordable. By the way, these trains were built between 1981 and 1994, so they're quite old. Let's see what first class from 30 years ago looks like. There are regular seats as well, but since it's an 11-hour ride, it would be very tiring to remain seated the entire time. The sleeper car has rooms, and each room has 3 seats. The seats can be converted into bunk beds when it's time to sleep. But you'll need to ask the train attendant to set them up for you. By the way, the train runs on diesel, meaning the rail line is not electrified. It's time to go to bed. He called the train attendant, and she set up the bunk beds for us. The beds were very small, so if you're a restless sleeper, you'd better avoid the upper bunk as you might fall out. It's time to sleep. Good night. Good morning. We woke up early to enjoy the scenery from the train. Once again, we asked the train attendant to put away the bunk beds. I was hoping to see some kangaroos, but there weren't any. All I could see were some cows and sheep. This train is called the XPT, and it's going to retire soon, to be replaced by a new train. I'm glad I got the chance to ride it before it retires. We arrived at Southern Cross Station, and took a free tram to our hotel. One of the good things about Melbourne is that the trams are free. The downside, however, is that they're always packed. We left our bags at the hotel and walked to Chinatown. Christmas nutcracker statues were already on display, even though it was still November. I've never noticed nutcracker statues in Sydney. Is it just me, or are they way more common in Melbourne? There seem to be heaps of them here. Many shops weren't open yet because it was still too early in the morning. The first thing we wanted to do in Melbourne was visit a cafe street and have some good coffee. We walked around the cafe streets, namely De Graves Street and Centre Place, and decided to have coffee there. The cappuccino was nice, but honestly, we have good cappuccinos in Sydney too. I think what makes this special is the experience of enjoying a cappuccino on a famous cafe street in Melbourne while soaking in the atmosphere. That's where the real value lies. By the way, the pumpkin soup there was huge. Melbourne is well known for its street art. The City of Melbourne officially encourages street art, as noted on their website. We've seen street art in Melbourne many times before, but since it had been a while, we decided to visit some of the famous lanes. Our first stop was Hosier Lane, one of the most famous places for street art. If you want to create a mural, you usually need permits from the council and the property owner. Street art without proper permits is considered graffiti or illegal and will be removed. There are some de facto free-to-paint areas where permits aren't required, and Hosier Lane is one of them. By the way, there are maps for street art available online. So, if you're visiting Melbourne and interested in street art, it's a good idea to check out the online street art map. Next, we move to AC/DC Lane, which is dedicated to the famous Australian rock band AC/DC. From there, we continue to Duckboard Place, which connects to AC/DC Lane. I really love this specific piece of art in Duckboard Place because it features the word Melbourne. Yes, I guess that's just me being a tourist. My partner has to meet someone, so I'm going to have lunch alone. There's one place I've been wanting to visit. The name of the shop is Udon Yasan, which literally translates to the person or shop that sells udon. Their name is pretty straightforward, isn't it? I chose this place because I heard they serve handmade udon noodles. And a bowl of cold udon is perfect for a hot day like today. Oh, by the way, November in Melbourne is the last month of spring, and it's quite hot. Since Australia is in the southern hemisphere, the seasons are opposite to those in the northern hemisphere, just in case you didn't know. The handmade udon noodles were really good, with a perfectly balanced texture, and the price was also reasonable. I wish they had a shop near my house. I definitely go there at least 3 times a week. Above Central Station is Melbourne Central Shopping Centre. Designed by Kisho Kurokawa and built by Kumagagumi in 1991, this location housed Daimuro, a Japanese department store, until its closure in 2002. Kumagagumi and Daimuro never turned a profit on this project. I wonder if it had something to do with the collapse of Japan's bubble economy around 1991. The number of tourists from Japan must have dropped significantly. The building was redesigned in 2002, and it seems that Kurokawa's original design was largely compromised. The State Library Victoria is a must-visit place. It has beautiful architecture. Before going there, I recharged with a beer at the Asian Beer Cafe in Melbourne Central. The interior of the cafe was stylish and had a retro Asian pop culture vibe. From the balcony of the cafe, I could see the State Library Victoria, which was my next destination. This library is free to enter and has wonderful architecture, so it's a popular spot for tourists. The famous reading room is especially stunning. The library was built in 1854. Okay, it's older than me. It must feel so special to read books there. If I'd had access to such a beautiful reading room, I would have read many books and become much smarter. No wonder Melbourne University is highly ranked. After this, we went for dinner, but it wasn't as good as I had expected. We didn't eat much and decided to go to a popular ramen bar instead. They also have a shop in Sydney, but there's always a long queue, so we decided to try the Melbourne location. The name of the shop is Mensho. The Melbourne location also had a queue in front of the shop. I was hesitant, but my partner insisted we wait, so we ended up waiting for about half an hour. When we finally got in, a staff member told us to order online using a QR code. However, we couldn't place our order online because the reception was too weak. Instead, we ordered through the staff, and then waited another 15 minutes or so. By the time our ramen finally arrived, I was already questioning whether it was worth such a long wait. My verdict? Yes, it absolutely was. Their ramen was wonderful, especially the thick chicken broth, which was amazing. Sorry for doubting it, and thank you for the delicious ramen. And that wraps up our day 1 in Melbourne.